weather.
as long as it doesn't rain and I can get home all right, I don't mind. Oh,
Ooh, you and Beth on a spaceship.
Oh, that's what's
we're
good.
next to each other, but
Ah.
weird. One of
I
us is
think,
muted.
yes, you might have to turn off the sound on one of the devices, I think, perhaps.
Okay.
Maybe you already have.
How's that?
That's better.
Great. Well done.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't
Shut
rain,
my
I can get home on my bike, then I don't mind.
Oh, well done. You always cycle, do you?
Well, when I can, yeah. The first couple of months of this year, the cycle path was just totally flooded.
Oh, wow. Really?
It just took weeks and weeks and weeks to clear, but it's clear now. So yeah,
You might be one of the most local people to the office then, are you?
yeah. I think it's about 6 miles. Is it? I don't know. Less
Hmm.
than, I don't know. It takes half an hour to cycle. So
Oh, that's not bad. They haven't tried to give you caretaker keys then yet.
I wouldn't accept. I used to be a caretaker. I'm not doing that again.
Yeah, no, no. I imagine you wouldn't get enough reading done. You
No,
do all
no.
those
And
practical
I'm
things
not
then.
practical enough. I look at something, I have no idea how to fix that. Or more often than not, I dare not touch that because if I don't do it right and then someone comes along to use it and it blows up, then I'll feel terrible.
Yes, 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 exactly. A lot of responsibility. Beth, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Any news? Anything going on? Anything fun in recently?
There's a lot going on, that's for sure. Um, I was away in France for Easter, which was lovely. And last
Oh,
week I was in Belfast with our colleagues from fundraising teams across European Bible societies, which was great. And then today my team are in because we're celebrating our end of year figures. So we pretty much met our target. So very, very close. So they've done really, really well.
excellent.
In celebrating.
Good. Well done. So you're doing a social later on today?
We had,
Hello.
had lunch together, donuts,
Oh,
yeah, non-alcoholic fizzy drink. So yeah, we've celebrated. So that was
that
nice.
sounds nice. Oh, good. Good. Speaking of caretakers, Stuart, have you seen I Swear? I know you like your film.
No, I
I've got
haven't.
that in my watch list. I haven't watched it yet. Yeah.
Have you seen it, Claire?
No.
About the guy with Tourette's. Um,
Well, I've heard about it.
Won a lot of awards.
it's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Um,
It's brilliant. I mean, obviously, it's fruity language, but it's just done in such a good way. Really uplifting. We watched it with the kids, actually. You might be horrified when you see it that we've watched it with our 11 and 13-year-olds, but we've kind of decided that occasionally we might let them watch something that's,
Yeah,
rated because it's better for them to discuss it with us and for us to tell them what we expect them to not
yeah.
trip in.
I'm not one to judge. My favorite film is Jurassic Park, which came out 1993 or 1994. My parents took me to see it, and well, if it came out in 93, I was 3 years old.
were you terrified?
No, I loved it.
You
I
loved
loved it.
it.
I tried to watch that with our youngest at Christmas and she was too scared. She was 9. She's 10 now, but yeah, she was too scared.
Yes, yes, it is scary. But I remember watching it in Tunbridge Wells at my aunt's and
Yeah,
uncle's house, and my sister and
terrifying.
I went to watch it, and we were scared walking home that dinosaurs were going to appear from behind all the buildings.
I'm still scared to swim in the sea because of Jaws.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
yeah, exactly. Right, we're very cozy. Is anybody else? Have you heard from anybody else, Claire? So let me get my
Not
little list.
only die.
Okay.
I wonder if it's just the timing.
They might have forgotten that it's two rather
Yes.
than half
Yeah.
two.
Shall I
Um,
send an
Katie,
email? Shall
yeah,
I
Katie
just?
Yes.
actually
Send a
back.
quick email if you will. That would
Yeah.
be great.
Katie's coming. Abby put a message on our chat to say she's got an urgent meeting or work to do, so she can't join. I don't know. Matt's in,
Matt's in,
isn't
yeah.
he?
I
I
don't know where he is
haven't
though.
heard from him.
He might.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. That might.
And Rachel, I don't know.
There's two coming in now.
There's two.
Great.
Yeah, I've just seen them.
Brilliant. Great, here we are. Okay, right. In time for hello. How are
Hello.
we doing? Don't worry, you're here. You did really well. I have to confess, Claire had to call me not long before the call to say, because we usually jump on 10 or 15 minutes beforehand. She said, am I on the right link? And I was eating my lunch in the sunshine with my hat on. quite happily. I said, "Oh, well, yeah, I'm going to come on at 2:15." She said, "Well, we're starting at 2." Oh, yes. So I will forgive anybody who is late today. Easily done. Right, let's get into this because I absolutely love this tool, and there's a particular insight on this tool that we haven't used before that I'm really excited for us to get stuck into. I think it's going to be really, really, really helpful. And so I'd just like to pray, if you don't mind. Father, thank you for the people on this call. Thank you for their intentionality about growth to liberate themselves and others. And I pray that you would really increase and multiply the impact of this time together now, that it would be for good. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, great. So let's dive in. The recording's in progress, so people can catch up. And I'm also doing a deep dive tomorrow workshop. So if you like what you hear today, and if you find it helpful, some of what we do in this session will be the first half of tomorrow's workshop with the whole, and all of the leaders have access to that. So encourage your colleagues to tuck into it if you've enjoyed it too. So let's go across straight away to the Bible slide for today. And it's this verse from Luke 2. Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God and all the people. And you may have heard this used before in relation to the giant tools. I think it's a really good one to emphasize. Jesus grew. He grew. I mean, how can we work that out? He was perfect, and the word grew is an imperfect tense. So it's that sense of he had something that he was working on, even though he'd already attained it. It's a both and. It's one of those things that could sort of blow our minds, and maybe we can pick up on it in discussion in a minute. But it's that sense of actually working at it, having wisdom and stature, but also wanting to make sure that those things were as healthy as they possibly could be, and that it mattered to Jesus. He wasn't one of those ascetics that was just completely blinkered and blind to what anyone thought. James is reading a book at the moment called The Courage to Be Disliked, which is a brilliant title, isn't it? And I think there's other thinking on around at the moment that suggests that we should just not care two hoots what people think. And if we're not careful, that could be used, I think, couldn't it, to just go our merry way without any reference to how other people feel to be on the other side of us. So today's session is about caring what God feels first and foremost, but also how we land with others. So recognizing that we need to think about the lens through which others see the world, and therefore how we could perhaps make ourselves the most palatable leader, get out of our own way or get out of their way when we're leading, to try to liberate people as much as we possibly can. And to do that, we need that self-awareness. So once again, well done. This is one of the most challenging, honest, raw journeys you'll ever go on, because we're constantly looking in the mirror, finding that broccoli in our teeth, and then doing the hard work of removing it on a daily basis. So I hope that sounds exciting and encouraging. Okay, so here is the influence model that you've been doing a deep dive in your altitude sessions recently. And what we're always talking about here, the goal, the end result that should really fire us up, and I'm sure does fire us up, is relationship with others. How can we make sure our relationships with those we lead, with ourselves, those at home, and those in the organisation as well, are the healthiest they possibly can be? In other words, how can we build influence and impact with people rather than just transactional interactions with people, just that here or there or every so often? So there's a recipe here. There's a recipe or an equation that helps us to find our way towards that relationship. And that recipe has four ingredients, and these are the four. First of all, character. And in short, character is, do I like you? Or do you like me? It's that sense of, can I trust you? So it's integrity. It's, are they trustworthy? Is this person legitimate? Are they who they say they are? And in the world of AI, this is becoming increasingly important. It's a key aspect of virtue ethics. So it's been around for a while, but I think we're really emphasizing it more and more now to say character is what really matters, is who is that person really? And then the chemistry, I wrongly said character was likability. It's linked, but it's chemistry that's likability. Chemistry is fun, is vibes. It's that sense of actually having that collaboration flow with somebody, feeling like there is something that you can hook into with them and they can hook into with you. Competency, are they good at what they do? Do they know their stuff? And then credibility, can they make the stuff they know and can do relevant to my particular context and to this particular area here? Are they credible? So those are the four, and we're thinking about them quite a lot now because it's important that we have all four and we emit all four and we look for all four in others and help others to build all four so that they will lower their self-preservation with us so that we can build relationship with them down the line. So we've already done a little sort of first draw of that one. But how about this? This is what I'm really excited to show you today. You might want to take a screenshot of this and you might want to have a little look at it. So we're thinking about the 5 voices connection with the tool today. So what are these voices naturally good at in general? Now, there'll always be exceptions to this. Sometimes nurture, environmental factors can mean that one of our areas hasn't developed as well as it should. Or our second voice as well. You might want to look at that top layer and think, what's your second voice? Because that will give you an extra clue as to which are perhaps stronger or weaker than others who are different. But if you just scan down, the nurturer is really good at those character pieces. They're heart-led, so their chemistry is usually fairly good too. The introverted nurturer probably will struggle a little bit more with the chemistry piece. Maybe not, it depends on the full complement of their voices than the extroverted nurturer. But the competency gets the red, and that's not because the nurturer isn't competent, it's because they need to work at demonstrating that, projecting that competency to the external world. And the way that they can sometimes undermine their competency or their credibility is through being distracted by the people. So sometimes nurturers can be late for things. Sometimes nurturers cannot be as thorough in their task or not have really worked at that presentation. That's because they'll be thinking too much and worrying too much about how it might land with certain characters. Or they're on their way to a meeting and they're on time, somebody rings and they take the call, even though it might not be the best time to do so, and then it makes them late for that next meeting. And that can undermine competency and credibility. So the really healthy nurturer has learned to calibrate those two, knows when to put boundaries around relationships, and knows what they're good at and can project that to the external world. So that's one thought, those thoughts on nurturers. We then have our creatives, and you can see it's very similar for the creative connector and the creative pioneer in the area of character. Creatives have integrity as a very high value. So they will always be a trustworthy person, but look at where they differ in that middle space in particular. So for the creative connector, their work on is in their competency, and that's because they can lack focus. They can overthink something, they can lack clarity in how they're projecting it. Communication is a massive work on for the creatives. And then the creative pioneer, it can be the chemistry piece sometimes. They're a T in the Myers-Briggs, they're a thinker. So sometimes they can just come in and out of a team. Everyone knows what they're good at. Everyone kind of trusts them in their area of competency, but they're not sure whether they like them. They're not even sure whether they want to be part of a team. They're usually quite a lone ranger. So creative pioneers usually have to work at chemistry and building relationships. And then we have the guardians, who tend to be really good at the character and the competency. They know usually they know that chemistry isn't their best thing. They do need to work at the fun, attend the socials and so on, but they don't always know that credibility isn't as high as possible. And why is that? Well, that's because sometimes they know so much detail, they value so much detail that all the detail comes out rather than just what is needed in that moment. So really make sure you can think about what does this person really need from me right now? So I don't just go into a rabbit hole with everything I know about this topic, but actually I can actually show that I'm really valuing their time and I can summarize. So emotion and personal connection go along with that. Then we have the connector. And at their worst, connectors flit about from one idea to the next. Don't focus on anything, leave everything unfinished, and that can be quite hard. And there's a high incidence of ADHD with connector that can make it a real challenge for connectors. And I know some really high functioning connectors who have been brilliant at overcoming some of those challenges. So, what can they work on? Do what you say you'll do. The connector really needs to follow through, to stick to deadlines. And if you're line managing a connector who has those traits, always try to make sure that you hold a deadline. It's not kind to move the deadline. We talked about that before, but that you encourage them about how they can come across. We need a bit less chemistry from sometimes from the connector, and we need a little bit more action. Sounds like an Elvis Presley song. So next we have the pioneer, and the pioneer can be very competent and credible. Usually that is their bread and butter. Their purpose is also their recharge. Their fifth gear is also their first. So that's what they know they're good at. But often they are less good at the relational stuff, less than they think they are. So it depends on their second voice. But usually they have a work on in the area of either character or chemistry. Are they faithful to people? Do they only ring someone when they want something? Or are they able to show up year round and value that person as a human being, not just a human doing? So there's a little deep dive there, and I'd like to credit Jimmy Dale, who is going to be on the call tomorrow, for having summarised it in that way, because Jimmy and I liaised on this morning. So I think that's a really nice way of looking at it. So just note down if you've got any questions that you'd like to bring up in a minute, because we're going to go to a breakout very soon. And the question is this: which C do you lead with, and which is your growth area? If you've already done that work, you might want to consider that for somebody in your team as well, and think, how could I help that person in my team to get to the next level? So thinking about perhaps where that person is. So maybe when we were doing this, you were thinking, oh, this totally reminds me of Joel in my team, to take an example. Okay, how could you help Joel then to get to the next level? So what is the work that Joel needs to do if you've done the work for yourself already? So have a little think about that, either from yourself or from your teammate. Let's go back now into, let's stop the share and come into the room. Now that was quite a bit of stuff, a download. Any questions on that, or any thoughts on what you're going to be discussing? Has everyone got a key area, themselves or someone else, that they can discuss now in the breakout? Happy? Yeah, excellent. Okay, go and get stuck in. And everyone's got that slide to refer to as well. So if you're not sure what to do, start with, you can send us into the rooms now, Claire, thank you. You can start with that column that's your voice order and move on from there.
Do you want to know both questions?
Please.
Yeah. Okay. I think I lead with character. So I think, yeah, things like reliability and integrity, things like that. I think the one that I want to work on is credibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, yeah, just looking at the Guardian one, I think that's pretty close to me. But I think I'm picking credibility over chemistry, just because I think when I'm with people, and especially in work situations or just with people, my yellow goes quite high. Subconsciously, it's quite low. So I think I'm already quite good at like putting that up quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go with credibility instead, and say that I think, because I'm quite young, but I am in a few like leadership positions, like at church and work and stuff, I think I have a tendency to downplay myself, especially if I'm not fully confident in something, because I'm aware that I'm young and I don't want to come off as if I like know everything. But I think sometimes I do it a little bit too much. And I think that confidence is really important in leadership. And I was talking about our old head of fundraising, Tom Newbold, who I thought was really great. And one of the things that I think he did so well is that I don't think I ever saw him like flustered. Like he was just a very confident, relaxed person. And I just think in leadership, that goes a really long way. So I think, yeah, for me, I think it's just Yeah, I don't really know. That's what I've thought about, but I don't really know exactly how to do it because I think I generally am quite a confident person.
Mm.
So, yeah, I don't know. That's my
That's
thought.
so good. I like that you've linked projection of credibility to um, authenticity. That's what I've just heard.
Yeah,
So I've heard you say, because I'm young, I may not have experience of everything. I don't want to overplay things. I don't want to overpromise. Do I really know this? Have I done this before? And what will happen with some of the other voices is they will be quite happy to think, well, I've got relevant experience over there, so I can bring it here. Yes, I've got that. Whereas sometimes the guardian's precision will be, well, I've never been in exactly this situation before, so I can't honestly say.
yeah,
But actually, part of that not showing the fluster is to say, this isn't my first, this is one of Claire's phrases I've nicked. This isn't my first rodeo. I may be young, but I have had experience of leading teams before. I've got
yeah,
lots of opportunities. I mean, outside of the church, loads of people never lead a small group, don't speak
yeah,
in public, don't have leadership responsibilities from a young age. But the church is very good at doing that. So
yeah,
you have a lot of a stack of credible, applicable experience. So perhaps it's allowing yourself just to blur those lines slightly
yeah.
to see that there is relevant experience that you carry. Noel, that was really interesting. Thank you. I'll be really interested in the self-preservation part now and how that relates to confidence as well. Let's see, have a listen out for which of those three might be most relevant today when we go through it again on a deep dive. Because on any given day, the tool can just convict us, encourage us, open something up differently. Thank you so much. Noel, anything to come back on from my
Um,
chat through there?
no, I think that's a good point. Um, no, I'll think about it. That was good. Yeah.
What did you hear? What was the point you heard?
I think you were saying that, yeah, I think it's interesting what you were saying because I think when I'm in a church setting, so I'm on the leadership team at my church, and I think when I'm in a church setting, I feel quite confident because it's not a professional setting, if that makes sense. Like you can't mess up, I can't get fired. You're not paying me. I'm doing this voluntarily. And I can feel quite confident in that. But then
Yes.
when it comes over to work, it's like a whole different world.
Yeah.
So I think what you're saying is basically you can blur the lines between those two and sort of bringing that confidence over. Even if I have less experience in this area, I'm the same person in both settings. And so I think you're kind of saying to blur the lines there, is what I'm hearing a bit.
Totally, and especially because when we look at the verse we started with, Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and favor with God first and all the people.
Yeah.
And there's such a link between God, how God views us, and integrity, because integrity is how it really is. And what God sees, according to our faith, is what really is.
Yeah.
So that's why it means actually you can absolutely apply that same confidence to both spaces because you assume that God is seeing both. Great, thank you so much. That really yielded an interesting chat there. Let's go across to Katie Tang now. Hello, Katie.
Hello. Oh, hang
Hello.
on. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. Hello.
Perfect. Um, although, do I need to put the sound on?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, can I hear you?
Can you hear me? Hello, hello.
Yay!
Yay. Well done. You got it figured out.
I would say I probably lead with character, and the one I would want to work on is competency. So not, which makes sense with this chart, I guess, as a green, but um, because it's not that I'm not competent. I know I'm competent, but I find it hard sometimes with a lack of confidence to try and get that across. With we were talking a lot about without sounding like you've got a big ego, or that like I always feel like that's how it's gonna come across, even if it's a small thing. And I think I definitely need to work on the confidence around just because somebody doesn't necessarily agree with me doesn't necessarily mean I'm wrong if that's my area of specialism, if you know what I mean. I really
Yes.
like that.
Really good. Claire, can I bring you in as a fellow nurturer here? You've obviously looked at this tool before, so any thoughts on how this tool applies to you as a nurturer?
Yeah, I think being aware of it in the first instance is probably the most helpful thing.
Mm, mm, mm.
Um, but yeah, I'm in exactly the same position as you, Katie. So yeah, I don't have anything kind of specific to add, but being aware of it and being able to break these things down really does help. Um,
And so that makes me think, how can you keep yourself aware of it on a regular basis and just literally reminding yourself to
Yeah.
project competency into the external world? So, think about when are those moments when you underplay yourself or downplay yourself? When are you tempted to do that? And just notice some of those characteristics, and perhaps keep a log. Just the examine practice of every night, celebrating three things that have gone well and one thing that you could do differently. That's going to be helpful.
Okay. Thank you.
Lovely. Rachel, let's come across to you as another different voice on the call. What were your thoughts?
Okay, so I'm a creative connector, and I definitely struggle to make myself clear. But I have learnt that a lot of that is about preparation for me. And so, trying to make sure that situations are more that I have a chance to write things down and think it through before I do something. But I also found it quite interesting because I think this is my third voice as my nurturer. And I've had a couple of situations where I've been told, oh, I wouldn't have had a clue you could do that. And then, and even like with my role that I've got now, my boss sort of said she would have had no idea I could do the stuff I'm doing. It's only because Kerry left and I stepped up. So I find that quite interesting. I think it's a consistent thing with me that I just tend to bumble along, just doing my own little thing.
So that sense of making sure that your competencies are known,
Yeah.
and that you aren't doing anything that undermines the way that you're viewed with others as well. Great.
Yeah.
I'm going to move on now, but Stuart, I'd love to hear yours at the next time when we hear back and feedback so that we're going to keep the momentum going, because I think what's become clear is it is really helpful to look at this tool and think not just about what we're receiving from other people or what we're looking for in others or what we think they want, but also what's going on inside as well. Because that's the other half of the tool, isn't it? Is we want other people to lower their self-preservation. So, for the nurturer, if they project more competency, then other people will kind of trust them more. That's great. But we've also got to lower our own self-preservation as well at the appropriate moments for others to see. Because if our self-preservation is high, then others will find it hard to trust us as well. Let me show you an example from another place. I mean, I've subtitled this section, How Can I Be More Confident? Because it massively is impacted by our confidence. We lower self-preservation when we feel genuinely confident inside that we're in a safe place to do so and that we will be seen, and that our competencies and things and character will be valued. So here's a little analogy from the area of sport. In basketball, there's something called sports cybernetics that's used alongside technique. Now, I used to be part of a basketball community and we'd go and help coach on camps. And the most important thing to become a good basketball player was to practice, 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 practice. So practicing your shooting. My son is into basketball at the moment. We have a full height basketball post in the garden, which is right here in my eyesight. And he's just practicing all the time, practicing all the time. Now that's really important. He has the right technique, but it's not the only component of a good shot. The other component is what's going on inside his head. So as he shoots, his muscle memory will tell him exactly what to do. But if his mind is saying, I'm going to miss, no, I can't, oh, that's not very good, oh, that's ugly, oh, someone might be watching, that wasn't very nice, then that will tell his muscles to pull back. And therefore, he won't be able to execute the shot physically as well as mentally, as well as he might. So we've got to pay attention to what's going on inside our minds, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, if we're going to be able to perform well. So we need to make sure that it's a yes, I can, yes, I can, yes, I can. Okay. Now, the caveat here is we shouldn't always lower our self-preservation. So be very careful. If you think that someone is untrustworthy, then make sure that you keep that in place. But if it's an opportunity, you're with somebody, you want to build influence, you want to build a relationship, it's appropriate to do so, then it's important to be aware of these three questions. So self-preservation will lower when we can look at each of these three questions and we can answer nothing for each. Number one, what am I afraid of losing? Is there something that I am afraid I will lose or I'm afraid will go down if I actually am able to project myself as healthily as possible in this space? So an example would be when I first became a coach. Previously to that, I'd been a teacher at a local school, senior school, and I'd left in a good spot. I'd left with results. I was in my 20s. I didn't have any children. I was able to give everything to the department. The department had amazing results. We'd really grown it. And lots of colleagues were really complimentary and things were in a good spot. So I left in a high point. And then I had a break. And then I was invited back to come and do some leadership coaching. And I noticed I felt anxious about it. And I put it through this tool, very helpful to have these questions. I thought, gosh, yes, I am afraid of losing something. I'm afraid of losing their high opinion that I left with, of doing something that undermines their confidence. Teachers are notoriously hard to train. They don't have enough time and they know quite a lot, or they think they know quite a lot. And I would say that as a we from having been one. I'm not being unkind to that group. But often they can be really hard to train. They often have lots of critique involved. And I thought, oh, they might groan. They might think, what's she doing coming in? What can she teach us? So I was afraid of losing that high opinion. Whenever I bumped into someone in town, it would often be positive from that time. So I thought, but once I said to myself, do you know what? I am willing to risk losing that because I want to fight for their highest good. Support challenge matrix. I want to liberate them. I know how hard it is to do their job. And I want to go in and I want to help make it better. So that really helped to calm my fears and stop me from being afraid. So get specific. Have a feel around today. Is there something you're afraid of losing in this space, perhaps at work, in terms of maybe going for another role, or in terms of building relationship with a particular person in your life? Is there a fear there? Have a feel around. Second question, what am I trying to hide? Is there something you're trying to hide? Now, if we're trying to hide something, here's how we metaphorically come across. Now, some of you might watch Westerns. There's lots of stuff about on the TV at the moment about, the American early days, the pioneers, going into land. And if someone approached somebody with their hands behind their back, what do you think they might think? Rachel, you're off the volume, so do you want to have a guess? What might I have behind my back?
No idea.
Anyone?
No,
What do police say when they first see a criminal? Hands up. Yeah, thanks, Katie. Why?
They think you might have some sort of weapon.
A weapon, exactly. I am hiding something, and that immediately puts people on guard. They think, oh, what have they got? What they're hiding. And that's what it can feel like when we stutter over something or we're trying to sort of protect something behind us. So I remember when I was first sort of having a chat with somebody in an industry where I had no experience, and they said, "What experience do you have in this injury?" And I sort of in this sector, and I sort of stuttered and fumbled over it, and I didn't get that was an estate agent, and I didn't get that gig. I thought, gosh, that was really bad. I really sounded like I had something to hide there because I didn't have any experience. The next time I was asked it, what experience do you have in this sector? And I didn't have any experience. I had gone through this question and I had prepared a response. I'd reframed. So I was able to say, I don't have experience in your sector. My previous experience was in education and teaching. And that means you're going to get someone who is really competent in the boardroom, good at teaching, good at mentoring, and good at facilitating. That's my background, and I can apply it in your sector. And I got that gig. And that was because I didn't hide the fact that I didn't have any experience. I answered the question truthfully, but I had the confidence to reframe what seemed like a weakness into a strength. So think about where you might be able to do that. Is there any spaces where you're trying to hide? What's that thing on your CV you don't want anyone to know? Can you reframe it as a strength? And thirdly, what am I trying to prove? Is there a space where you really, 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 really want to prove something? And think about who that is. I asked a client this not that long ago, and a really successful business owner, and he said, I think I'm trying to prove to my father that I'm competent. And he's in his 50s. We often carry these things around with us for a long, long time. So have a little think about those three questions. Afraid of losing, trying to hide, what are you trying to prove? And think which one of those feels resonant for me today. If I was if I was holding back for a reason, which of those might explain the reason why? And if we're holding back, it will be known. We can't pretend. They pick up on those signals. Only, 9% of communication is the actual words we use. And over 90% is body language and tone and tact. And that will all be inhibited if we've got one of those things that we're hiding behind. Okay. So I'll deal with questions before we go out, but which of those three questions feels most relevant today is breakout twos fodder, and why? And do trust one another. Let's keep these conversations confidential, but it's really helpful to have a space where we can say it out loud. As Claire said before, sometimes just saying something out loud can actually be the best route to liberation. You can be far further down the liberation pathway than you'd realize. So any questions on self-preservation?
I was just going to say, can we take a quick photo of the
Yes, thank you. Yes, absolutely. And you can definitely refer to these as well. Might be helpful in other spaces you're in. Okay. Claire, before we all go off, is there anything to add? You're really good on this tool, self-preservation. It's your area as your therapy basis. That's really helpful.
Yeah, I think one thing to be aware of, if the fact that you're all here means that you are willing to do this work. And I think this is one of the hardest things to kind of face and answer these questions and be really honest with yourself. The really hard thing comes when you have got someone in your team or someone around you that just will have the wall up and is not even interested in looking over the wall, around the wall. They just want to hide behind the wall. And that in itself is quite interesting, and you can learn from that. But yeah, I think being really honest with yourself is going to give you the best result.
Very good. So start with yourself again for circles of influence. But if you've already done that work and you're able to answer very quickly, I know what my thing is. Maybe just move on then to be thinking about that team member that seems very closed off, and how might you use this tool to bring them some liberation. Thank you, Claire. Right, breakouts, off we go. And see you on the other side. Off with you, if that's okay. Are you happy to share? You can share this, or you can share the previous, which we didn't hear earlier. Which would you prefer?
No, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Yeah, we were just reflecting. Well, we had a discussion around those three questions, and then at the end we thought, I don't know if we've answered that in the way you're expecting, but I think, yeah, I resonate with the one about having some feeling you have something to lose. I struggle with that. I struggle with that a lot, actually, and I put that down to a sense of security. Or needing a sense of security and being afraid of taking a risk if it might jeopardize that security. So, last year, as you'll know, I'm sure, we went through a redundancy process for the whole organization. It was kind of a blanket, you all might be in danger sort of thing for a while. And my security felt threatened, and yeah, I did not like it at all. But I will maybe that's a question in my mind all the time when I go forward for something, or is it worth the risk of stepping out and doing this thing? If it backfires, I could lose a lot. And I think part of that comes from just my nature as a nurturer, perhaps, but also circumstances. Again, we were reflecting that by working here, we work for a purpose and for a calling, that we feel called to do something, but there is a financial kind of trade-off. We don't earn as much as people out in the corporate world, and I'm on my own, so I have a small salary, and that's it, to support myself. And when I feel threatened on that level, like, oh, I've got to safeguard that. I can't take a risk here, or I can't take a risk there, because if I lose that, I can't pay the rent and that type of thing. So yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying I resonate with that question particularly.
That's so helpful, Stuart. I love that. And did it cast any light onto how you might deal with that by just saying it out loud and getting clear
Yeah, well,
on what you're afraid?
Are very helpful, because I think it goes back to what we were saying in the previous tool as well. I think as nurturism, for me particularly, we will downplay our competency, even subconsciously, and think, well, I'm not as good as that person, or I'm not good at that. But other people see it differently and will say to you, no, actually, you are good, and your job is not at risk because you do a good job, and it's just not going to happen. So I think actually listening to people around me, and not just the voice in the back of my head that's saying, no, this is a disaster, or it's going to be a disaster, is a very concrete first step and a very helpful one.
Excellent. And it goes back to that verse, isn't it? That Jesus grew in wisdom and stature with God and with men. So building that confidence as a team as well, and that corporate sense of what you bring, that can be very, very helpful. And also, I think nurturers are very good, and guardians as well, are very good at doing the risk assessment on stepping forward. What if I do step forward? What if we take that risk? Okay, here's the list of things that could, negative consequences. But what they're not so good at doing is the risk assessment on not doing it.
Yeah.
What actually could we lose here? What are we at risk of losing if we don't step forward or stick our neck out or go for that opportunity or try that little side hustle or push that door? Actually, there's a lot to be lost there as well. A lot of lost potential, for example. So that might be an interesting exercise. Sorry?
Picture in my head is a bit like, I don't know if you saw the Hobbit films.
Yes.
The Hobbit film, and Bilbo is sat in his comfy Hobbit hole, and he's like, don't need any adventures, thank you very much, I'm quite happy here. Gandalf is like, well, actually the world is outside. That's me. I will very happily build a little nest and stay there.
Oh, I love it. I love it. But interesting, in that example, it was Gandalf, someone that Bilbo respected, that was able, he had the influence, all four C's, to call Bilbo out of that position to be in. So building influence with trusted people is good. Okay, so what I'm hearing is, Stuart, we have permission to tell you how amazing you are and to niggle you to put yourself forward more often. Beth's nodding. Let's go to Beth next. Love it.
Hi. Oh, it's echoing again. Sorry, had an echo.
That's okay.
I think I don't feel so much I have something to prove, because when you've worked sort of in fundraising for a long time, you do know that you're competent. So I feel like I don't have to prove it. But I think for my team, I want them to feel they can fail and it's okay. Like, we can test things. You don't always have to get it right. And I think sometimes there is that feeling that we can't try something because it might not work. But in fundraising, it's just really important that we innovate, and it won't always work. But you shouldn't be afraid of losing something or not being credible because it didn't work, because that's how we learn. And so long as we take that learning forward, then it's a positive thing to do. I think that's really important for us. But I kind of feel like Bible Society is quite a safe space. So I don't feel this is as much a thing as it would be maybe in some corporate environments where you're constantly investing in proving yourself in that way.
So how could you create conditions? That might be the as we move into the core process. How can you create conditions for people to feel safe to take a risk and to fail, where failure itself and the learning you get from failure is celebrated in the team?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing, a good question to ask that we love to celebrate successes, but also we have to celebrate the fact we tried, we tested something
Yes,
new. That's good. It's a good
yes.
thing to do to be bold and step forward. So yeah, we need to do that as well.
So good. So that could be an extra layer on the communication code we've talked about before as team leaders to make sure that meetings open with celebration and care and think about that. What are we celebrating? Are we celebrating
Yeah.
failure?
And I think it's understanding we're all learning. You never know
Yes.
everything about fundraising. No one can. I don't. Nobody does. You have to test and learn at every step, and that's part of it.
Love that. I'm going to write down on what every session I try and get something new, and I'm going to write down um like that importance of celebrating. What have I tried and failed at lately? Yeah. And that might be a question we ask ourselves in the evening when we're journaling, or it might be a question we ask our team as well. That's so brilliant. Love that. Time for one more. Noelle or Rachel, either of you happy to share on this? I know this can be quite private, but would either of you be happy? Thank you, Noelle.
Yeah, I can.
Thank you.
I talked about mine was what am I trying to prove? And I just think it's because recently I was just a normal member of the fundraising team, but now I'm on the managers team. And I think I am confident that I can do it. And I think that I can. And I know Beth is, or else she wouldn't have asked me to do it. But I think I've been very careful not to, I feel like I do this in my whole life. I'm careful to stop assuming what other people think. So, someone will make a comment or Rachel had a good example of someone showing up late to a meeting, and you can kind of think of like, oh, do they are they seeing me as being a manager? Do they respect me in that way? And so I think that has just been a bit of an internal thing for me, but not massively. Like it's just sort of this thing that I think is a bit in the back of my mind, which I felt really encouraged by, that it hasn't seemed to like take over for me, but it's definitely there. And I think about it from time to time. But I think I feel confident enough in myself. And I also think I've just been reminding myself that like these transitions take time and you just have to like get used to new people and new roles, and then like things are fine. So, but yeah, I think that was the one that recently is the one that I've been, yeah. So the negative side of that is that you can naturally just try to do things to prove that you are
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
you should be in the role that you're in.
Yeah.
So I've just been careful to not do that and just to be myself and be normal. So yeah, so it hasn't felt like a major battle for me, but it's definitely like something that's in the back of my mind recently.
I'm going to take Stuart's cue to introduce a visual thought because I love it when he does that. And I'm just thinking about somebody that starts wearing jackets with shoulder pads because they have become a manager. It's that sense, isn't it? Is there something I should do to indicate
Yeah.
that I am now a manager so they take me seriously?
Yeah.
And of course you wouldn't do that. And you're thinking, okay, but to what extent do they need something more from me that I wasn't bringing before? I think it's one of the hardest things to do, isn't it? To go from being on the equal level to stepping up. It's much easier to go and join a new organization as the manager because then you set out in that way. But yeah, that transition is something that requires a bit of thought. So it's really good that you've already started to do that work. Wonderful. Well, in a minute, we're going to hear lots of core processes. So I'll wait to hear some of the ahas from today then. But it's that time where we look at core process and we think about what our tendencies are. So we've done 2 deep dives today. We've done a tendency in terms of the 4 C's. Which of those tendencies, for my voice order or for me in particular, do I have? Which one am I undermining? So which one do I downplay? And then those small pattern changes, what's one thing I can do that can change my reality down the line as my actions and my consequences change as well? So what can I do to just show up in a way that is more healthy? And then you just put it through that core process. So call it as a pioneer. I recognize that sometimes character is a learning opportunity. Own it. What am I doing or not doing that contributes to that? And, when I first started to do these tools, I found the 5 circles of influence really helpful to think it's about God and me and my most nearest and dearest, Gilbert and Laurie and James, my husband. And then who are those people? Who are my square squad? That second gear deep dive we did not that long ago. Who are those most important people who I really need to make sure I am faithful to over time? So who are my best friends? That 5 to 12 people. And actually, how faithful am I in those friendships? How regularly am I seeing them, speaking to them, reaching out to them? Or am I just reaching out when I need something? And I have to say that there were times of inconsistency with that in my life before as a pioneer, but this just shone a light on it. And I was able to say, I'm not as consistent in those friendships as I want to be. So my respond was to think about who those people were and how I wanted to be, how I wanted to be in the way I showed up with them. Execution then was being intentional about putting in the diary on a regular basis how often I was going to see those people. So one of my square squad, Liz, try and see her fortnightly. She's got a little boy called Joel, and we try and get together for a prayer walk and a chat every fortnight. It doesn't always happen, but we always have one. She's a guardian, which helps. So we always have one in the diary and keep ourselves, related to that. And then there's others as well. There's other of those friendships. And I think, how am I going to make sure that that friendship's happening and that we're not just transactional? So execution usually involves looking at your calendar and your schedule and putting something in. So what is that for you today? Which of those tools or which of those parts of the tool have really impacted you the most? What was your most poignant insight today? What did you write down and put a circle around? Was it one of those 4 C's to work on, or was it one of those self-preservation questions, either for you or for someone else? And then can you get to that clear next step? Just one thing is absolutely transformational, that small pattern change. So for me, as I just talked you through that tool right there and then, I literally in my head was going through those square squad people, going, right, who do I need to make sure I'm back on track with? And, my friends, Beth and Harriet, every so often we regularly have a chat online. We don't have one in the diary at the moment. So my execution from this session will be to go and put one in the diary immediately after. Okay, so what is it for you? So get specific and coach. This is where you learn to coach one another. That brilliant skill you can apply to your team leading as well. So any questions? Are we happy? And then when you come back, it'd be great for everyone. You can pass, but I'd love to hear everyone say their core process next step out loud. Thank you so much. See you soon. Hello, everybody. Hi, Rachel, I'm going to come to you first, if that's okay.
Yeah.
She's like, no.
Okay, so I kind of cheated a bit because this is my PDR goal as well. But
Yes, that's all right.
I said, so as calling it is as a third voice nurturer, I don't demonstrate my competence. So owning it is I step back and I let others lead. My response is I'm going to open meetings with a planned speech that positions myself as the lead. And executing it this is a bit murky because I can't do it until they've booked their training sessions in, my team. But I'm going to book onto a training with each trainer over the year.
Great. I love that. And if you're going to do that bit of prep, my learning there is to schedule the prep as well as the call.
Yeah.
And because a little bit will go a really long way. Honestly, even if you have 5 minutes or 10 or 15 to go, I'm going to actually just prep that.
Yeah.
And just, even if in your head, I grew up with my dad being a basketball coach, and he'd just sit in his chair with his cup of tea after supper before the training session. He'd watch the news, maybe sometimes have a little doze. And then when he had a few minutes to go, he'd just pick up his notepad and he'd plan the session. And then he'd go and get in the car and he'd go calmly into the car because he had that little plan. And literally, it was on a tiny little notebook, tiny notepad that fit in his pocket.
Yeah.
Or you can do it on your phone nowadays. But it's that sense, isn't it, of just feeling prepared, helps you to feel confident. That's what I've heard, Rachel.
Yes. Oh, it
Being
needs to be
prepared.
totally written.
Preparing in writing
Mm.
helps to build your confidence. There you go.
Yeah.
That's your response. So now you still need the execution, which is specific things you're going to put into your schedule. So great. Well done, Rachel. That's really, really good. Okay, Katie Tang, let's come to you.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, I'm gonna have to put my sound up again.
I always say Katie Tang. It's just such a great word. That ta-ta-ta.
My initials, this will blow your mind. My initials are also my name, KT.
Even cooler. I want to see a KT.
That's cool.
When you're working from home, I want to see like a KT on a little shelf behind you. Just look awesome. That's the confidence we want you to be projecting.
Talking of confidence, that's the thing I was going to work on, because I said about the thing I needed to work on was was the competency bit, but from the confidence angle. And I think I realize I am probably my own worst enemy with a lot of it, because I've noticed, and I had an example I shared recently where I'd worked on something, and I had, in hindsight now, because somebody pointed it out to me, I had lots of really good feedback. There was one thing in there that could have potentially been seen as totally threw me to the point where I Stuart and I, because I said it makes me question my entire existence.
Yes.
Like it's not just, oh, I'll get that right next time. It's like, Katie, why are you on the planet?
Yes.
That's like the 0 to 100 catastrophizer in me. But that knocks my confidence. And I know I do it. I know I'm my own worst enemy. So I was thinking, well, what do I do to change that? Maybe I need to, we were saying about how writing things down is sometimes helpful. So I thought maybe next time I get some feedback, if I do like a good feedback, things to work on list, and actually make myself look for the good things as well as the not so good. And then
yeah, brilliant. And Katie, you're not the only nurturer. And I came across a nurturer garden very recently who had that exact thought, highly competent person. One of the relationships with one of their children was slightly off. And they literally said, I might as well not be on this planet. Literally, they said, my reason for existing, it was exactly the kind of things you've just said. So you're not alone. Claire, I'm going to put you on the spot. As a fellow nurturer, is there anything that you have found helpful? And it's okay just to say no, because I've absolutely put you on the spot here. That might be helpful for a nurturer who can find it's just so hard to hear that 95% of things that were really good, but that one thing really throws them off. How in real time can they build up that resilience to not let that shake their whole ground they're standing on?
Perspective, which is a DeMartini tool, but also
Yeah.
Acknowledge, oh, that was uncomfortable, but am I still here? Yes. Is it the end of the world? No. So yeah, just keep it in perspective and try and see what is the benefit to you of having that feedback or of being uncomfortable.
Claire, you mentioned that it's a DeMartini tool. Is that something that can be briefly summarized, or would you need
it really is just that. What perspective are you looking at it from? You're only looking at it from a negative perspective. You're not seeing what the potential benefits to you are. Because sometimes the feedback, there is going to be things that you can pick up and work on, and they're not saying, you don't deserve to be on the planet, or, end of the world type thing. Yeah. And also with all of these things, and I don't want anyone to kind of answer any of the points out loud necessarily, but there is always going to be a backline to things that have happened, and that's the reason why these particular things sting. And so if you can look at them from the perspective of an adult who is now in control, where previously possibly weren't in control. That's really helpful as well.
Thank you. Yeah, the phrase I've got there is zoom out and
Yeah,
zoom back in again. So
yeah,
you can stay on the zoom in if you're that detail person, people
yeah,
detail and systems with Nurture Guardian. So zoom out, go a bit bigger and a bit larger and try to say, what are the benefits of this?
yeah.
And what are the benefits I'm bringing more broadly? Good, might be more on that. I encourage you, Katie, if you want to keep thinking about that, to take Claire up on that offer to have that 15-minute one-to-one.
Yeah,
You could
definitely.
do a little deep dive on that
Get rid of
DMRT
the
tool.
catastrophizing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be great. Get that help. Brilliant. Beth, let's come to you next, please.
I think, oh, I know, sorry. I think I prefer to spend the time doing a good job rather than saying to people, "Hey, look, I did a good job." But actually, that's really important internally. We need to build that credibility in the fundraising team. So just making sure that I'm really regularly sharing what we're doing, how it's working, and what the external factors are as well. So they see that we are the experts and we do understand what we're doing and see and share those successes with us. So do that regularly, I think.
Excellent. Just exuding that confidence. And that's the irony is you celebrating what you've done that's worked will grow competency. So will you sharing what you've tried and done and hasn't worked, but that you're celebrating the ground that's been taken. That
Yeah.
will communicate even more confidence. Wow, they're confident enough to fail. Wow, that's really competent. So it's funny how it works against what we imagine.
Mm.
Great, Beth. So think of when is the next opportunity for you to do that, to tell what you've done and got right. Stuart?
Shall I? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, I will make myself a template on my notes app with two columns for pros and cons, or plus and minus, whatever you want to call it, to try to get over the well, you said, Katie, catastrophizing. What could I lose? And try to do a balance sheet every time I come across an issue like that. Well, I'm tempted to think that way. I think actually, let's be realistic. What could go wrong, but what could go right, as you said, Laura, and hope that calms some of that fear, some of that anxiety, and also related to that. And I think I'll tag these lines to that template. Yeah, as a Christian, there's a hymn I come back to in moments like that, which has the lines, "When Satan tempts me to despair and tells me of the sin within, upward I look and see him there who made an end of all my sin." Yeah, refocus on him.
Amen. Amen. And that's covered. You can't lose that.
Yeah.
That's kept for you forever in heaven. Stuart, that's so beautiful. I love that. Thank you. And then also let's hear back from Noelle. I'm sorry, Noelle, you had to work very hard today, and this is your third time I've come to you.
It's okay. Mine is going to be focusing on the second one, which was talking about, I think mine is all about not making assumptions. Rachel and I had a conversation about how often we make assumptions about what other people are thinking. So this is to do with the what do I need to prove thing. And so I think it's as the Bible says, taking thoughts captive, which I do think I've already been doing, but I want to continue it and be intentional with it. So I think I'm just going to make a note somewhere. Yeah, just about taking thoughts captive, probably on my to-do list somewhere where I can see it. I don't know.
Love that.
Yeah.
So developing that practice of
Yeah. I think it's something, yeah.
Go on.
I think it's something I do when I notice it, but
Mm.
maybe there are times when I'm not being intentional with it. So yeah.
So good. James has been really raving lately about centering prayer. He's got me doing some centering prayer, which comes from Stuart's tradition. And he says you need to just have a key phrase or a key word that you repeat. So whenever those thoughts come, whenever you're in those situations where you are thinking about what someone else might say, straight away that buffer is there ready to go. And that phrase is, whatever you are happy for it to be, I am qualified and, well thought of in this space, or, I have no need to prove my worth. My worth is obvious, or, to take Stuart's point, my worth was proven on the cross. Just something that just short circuits the spiral or the negative link. So I've been working on that. I'm really new to it, but I've found the word loved has been a really helpful centering word for me whenever those doubts come along my way. So Claire, last thought from you, anything to say as we end the call?
Nothing to add after that. I thought what Stuart said was really lovely. I was just thinking about that. Thank you, Stuart.
Brilliant. Thanks, everybody. I just appreciate and applaud, as Claire was saying earlier, your intentionality for being on this call and for giving yourself this time. You will be growing massively from it, and also your teams will be very, very grateful that they have such a wonderful leader in you. And I think the turnover in Bible Society is very, very low. Not many people seem to. I've known all these faces for so long, and what does that say? That speaks volumes, doesn't it, of the kind of quality of leaders. So they're really good at appointing leaders, and they've appointed you. So another good reason to believe in yourselves today. Okay, well, we'll see you again in a couple of weeks. And remember, tomorrow is that longer session where we're doing an even deeper dive on the influence model. So if you can think of anyone who you think would really benefit from it, and indeed, if you'd like to have another recap, please pop in for as long as you like tomorrow. I'd love to see you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
See you
you.
soon.
Thanks,
Thank
Claire.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a
Bye.
great afternoon.
Can't get out.
Bye, Rachel. It's lovely
Bye-bye.
to see you
Bye.
in Wales. Are you in